Hey there. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. We are super excited to be joined by one of our CCA students and coaches, Dori. Hey, Dori.
Hey,
And of course,
nice to be
Kate.
back.
It's good to have you back. We are especially excited because this episode is going to include a little before and after. We first talked to Dori about 6 months ago, fall 2020, somewhere in there, just as she was really starting to ramp up her business. And we talked about where she came from, where she was going, and where she was headed. Okay, so the first thing you're going to hear is the portion of the interview from 6 months ago. And of course, be sure to stick around to hear the podcast we are recording today. Enjoy. Hey, Dori, how are you?
I'm good, Nicki. How are you?
I am great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. As you and I were kind of talking about before we started recording this episode, what we're really just looking to do is kind of give people some insight as to what it's like to get started as a copywriter, what kind of background people have, and what it feels like to begin that journey. Now I know that actually you are, I would say, somewhat in the minority among students because you do have a writing background, right?
Yes, I have a almost 15-year background as a journalist. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And content too, right?
Yeah. So, yes, content too. I was a travel journalist, so it was a combination of writing news stuff, and yeah, I guess what you would consider more content, consumer-focused type articles. But I sort of always called myself a journalist, even with the content.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and really, I guess journalism is content too. It's all,
yeah.
It all meets in the middle and mixes up. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what put you on your path to copywriting?
Coronavirus. So the past 14 years, I've worked as a travel journalist, last 8 years specifically in the cruise industry. And when coronavirus hit, the cruise industry was quite disrupted. So I lost my job and I started thinking about, well, what do I do now? Travel's probably not coming back anytime in the immediate future. My major skill is writing. What are the writing opportunities out there? So I did think at one point about freelance content writing, travel writing. And one, as I said, travel really was sort of not a huge thing, still not. And two, I'd be competing with freelancers that were already out there that, I had been using freelancers, so they were already established freelancers. So to try and break in at a time when first there wasn't a huge demand for travel writing and two, there were already well-established travel writers, I wasn't sure that was the route I wanted to go. My first thing actually was I started a pet website and thought, okay, let me see what I can do with this, which I'm still doing. I'm still running my pet website. But it quickly became apparent that I couldn't make a living doing that. So I just, I started researching online and saw an ad for your course. And I had thought about copywriting before, but never had really given it much thought. It just wasn't anything I had really considered. I never watched Mad Men. I wasn't interested in advertising. So I just wasn't sure it was really for me. But I think I signed up for your newsletter and I watched your videos and you were very convincing. And so I decided, let me see what this is. Let me follow this and see where it takes me. I was not convinced I was going to be able to do it. I thought it was going to be very, it's in my mind at that point, it was so diametrically opposed to journalism. So journalism is the facts and, you tell the facts unbiased and advertising is not. And so I really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it. But again, I signed up, I took the course and I said, let me see where this takes me. And that was the start.
That's great. So how has your impression, or now that you know it, your knowledge, how does it compare? How does copywriting compare? I guess what I'm trying to say. How does copywriting compare to what you thought it was going to be?
So it's definitely, there are some similarities to what I thought and some differences. One, I found that I was less bothered by the idea of, um, of playing to people's emotions and their needs in a way that I thought I wouldn't like. But what I realized was, if you're offering something that's of real value, I mean, if there's a real product, then there's nothing wrong with getting people to understand that. You know, it's if you're lying and if you're making something up, then that's a problem. And while there may be people who do that, I'm not going to do that. So, so that was one that, you know, realizing that it's not pure, you're not just manipulating people for no reason. You are offering something that is of real value, and you just have to make them see that. And you're not going to force anybody to buy anything, but if it resonates with them because they're having that real problem, then you're doing them a service. So that was one. I think the biggest surprise for me with copywriting was that I never realized it was a puzzle, or I didn't think of it as a puzzle. And I realized that as you create different pieces, and not just like, oh, the subject line or the header or subheads and stuff, but actually the words themselves, that you have to compile the words in the right order and everything. And I loved the puzzle making aspect of it. I loved the way, because that's not how you content write. You just write, and you write a story, you know, even, you know, in journalism, you're still telling a story or whatever, but you're not compiling it. You don't have to figure which piece goes where in order to have what impact, but in copywriting you do, and it just makes it that much more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So those were some of, my findings as I started to get into it.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that puzzle aspect is one of my favorite things too. It makes the workday kind of feel like doing word problems in a way, you know?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I love, like, I know everybody does things differently, but my process usually is starting with some of the words that I want, that I think are most applicable, and then figuring out how to write around those words. And sometimes, sometimes I'll get rid of the words and add new words, but I like starting with the words and figuring out how to build from there. So.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
So as you know, that we celebrate wins, big and small, and basically we celebrate wins. What kinds of wins have you seen thus far?
So I'll tell you an interesting, I've had about 5 clients so far. And one of them I did a sales funnel for. So it was an eyelash extension salon. And she wanted to sell, we came up with some bundles that she wanted to sell to try and get some business. And we were not particularly successful with selling any of her bundles. We sold 2 bundles. Mm-hmm. But the open rates for the middle section, for the nurture section of the sales funnel, were very good. The first one was 32%. The others were 25%. They were decent open rates. And what we realized was that people may not be in a spending mindset right now, but they wanted to hear from her. They wanted to dream about when they could go back to getting their eyelashes done. And she realized that, they wanted to hear from her, and she could do more. She could do, once a month email just to sort of say, here I am, and let's dream and stuff. And even though, obviously I wanted to be able to say, deliver to her, 100 clients who had bought something and she made a lot of money. It was a win because people wanted to hear from her and were so interested in what she had to say. And the 3 pieces in the middle, which were these sort of informational and fun, because she has a great fun sense of humor and fun tone of voice, that people resonated with it, and they liked it, and they read the emails. And so for me, that was one of my biggest wins, actually.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes copy projects don't end up the way that we want them to, right? Like you were saying, it would have been awesome to be like, here, 8,000 new clients.
Exactly.
But, and that's part of why we don't offer guarantees, right? Is that there's a lot of stuff that's outside of our hands. You could write the most fantastic, amazing, compelling copy, but if people are going, well, first of all, I don't want to go, I don't want to be that close to someone for something non-essential right now.
Right.
And I'm also, saving up my money just in case. So probably lash extensions aren't
Right.
where I want to spend my money. Although frankly, the more time I spend on Zoom, the more I'm like, I need lashes. Send her emails my way. But the fact that you can still have a big impact, and I love the fact that you've been writing these emails for her, and they are, I mean, those are great open rates, especially when they're like, when they've, those are the open rates you expect to see at the, the first email, the second email, but the fact that you've been able to keep this excitement going for her and her business, what you're clearly doing is you're continuing to nurture these people so that when people are comfortable, when people feel like they need to treat themselves in some way, that's where they're going to look. And because you've been keeping her in their inbox,
right,
they're not going to forget about her.
Right.
She's on their wish list now.
Yeah. I mean, I was so surprised that the last email, which was the sales email itself, which again, didn't convert, still had a 22% open rate, which was like, so people had been liking whatever we were saying prior to, even though this, even by the headline made it clear that this was, here's this, we're selling you something, they still opened it up.
Because they wanted it.
Yeah.
Just the environment maybe is not like, oh, I want this. I love, which bodes so well for the future when the environment is a little bit different, not the environment, but what's going on in the world is slightly
exactly.
I love that. That is so cool. That is so cool. And it's cool and not everything we do is going to have those numbers validation, that numerical validation along with it. But when it does, I mean,
yes.
That's super cool. And then when you put it on your portfolio site, you say, I did the sequence for her, and consistently my nurture emails for her were opening at 25%. That's so cool. I love that. Yeah. I love that. So one of the reasons I reached out to you, besides the fact that, we interact in the Facebook group and I love what you've been doing and I love your energy. But we are also connected on LinkedIn. And when I go on LinkedIn, your posts will pop up, and I love the way that you have been promoting yourself without promoting yourself. Right. If you know what I mean, without saying like, hey, everybody, I'm available for copywriting services, just DM me.
Right.
It's been really, really savvy. And so I wanted to ask you about, first of all, really probably explain to the listeners or viewers what you're doing and how you've kind of strategized that.
So, I mean, full disclosure, I joined a group that the whole purpose of the group is to build a presence on LinkedIn. And we have like a leader, and he basically gives us choices every day of a variety of different types of posts that we can do. So he sort of has come up with, I think it's 6 different types of posts. And the whole purpose of these posts is to establish ourselves as experts. So it's not necessarily to sell ourselves. So we usually once a month we'll do what are called what we call a pitch post. Mine I think I've done 2. They tend to be somewhat subtle because I don't really want to just come out and be like, I'm a copywriter, hire me. But to establish ourselves as experts. And the way we do that are through telling stories, providing value. We will do like the typical quote post, but again, we add our own element to it. So here's a quote that resonated with me, and this is why it resonates me. And again, all of it is intended to one, show off the expertise that I have, 2, show off who I am as a person. I think part of my value when I'm writing for people, honestly, is they do get more than a copywriter, because I'm just the kind of person who will talk to you. You can bounce ideas off of me. If you're having a tough day, I will listen to you. So, I mean, you're not just getting a copywriter, in a way, you're getting a friend too. And so that comes out a lot in my posts. So the type of person I am. So I'm going to attract people who want to work with people like that. So yeah, it's a lot of storytelling. Some of it is client stories. I do tell stories about the things that, things that have happened with clients. And, I made a mistake in the email funnel that I told you about. The first time I did it, I made a mistake. Thankfully I was able to fix the mistake very quickly, but I tell the story of this mistake I made, that I was able to fix it. And people are going to make mistakes. That's okay. You move on, you do the best you can. So some of it are client stories, some of it come out of my own personal stories that I'm able to relate to larger issues, marketing, the marketing world in general. So it's a combination of a bunch of things, and yeah, it just builds who I am as a personality. People talk about branding a lot and having a brand, and I'm not one for like, oh, I need a logo and all this stuff, but my brand is who I am as a person and what you're going to get when you work with me. And I think that a lot of these posts really are helping to establish that sort of brand for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's a savvy way of putting yourself out there and making sure that that when people open up their LinkedIn page and they're connected with you, they see you, right? I mean,
Yep.
I see you. And I was noticing it and reading it and thinking, oh, this is really good. But I also love that you were exploring additional ways to put yourself out there. I mean, we cover a ton in the course, and but I love that even I'll be the first one to tell you that there is still so much more to learn, and none of us should ever stop learning.
Right.
And I love that you saw LinkedIn as an opportunity, and you're like, all right, well, I'm going to join a program that's going to help me do it and do it well. I think that's fantastic.
I mean, I will say, so I have received, I've had recruiters reach out to me on LinkedIn based on all that, asking me to apply for jobs. Right now, I'm interested in building my own company rather than applying for jobs. So I haven't actually taken anybody up on the offer, but people do notice. I mean, people do notice, people reach out. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the same recruiters who have, full-time positions can also reach out to you for contract positions, or, sometimes those full-time positions can become remote freelance positions, since we're all remote now anyway.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. Yeah. But it's very interesting in that, as a woman, and it's very interesting having my real first introduction to this was through your course. So led by a woman, with a lot of women in the course. And then going out into the wider world of seeing what copyright, all of this copywriting, and it's very male dominated, and seeing also the difference in the way that they operate, and the types of emails they send and things. And so another thing was feeling like, oh my God, do I need to be very aggressive and dominant in order to be successful? And also, do I want to be an 8-figure copywriter and do things their way? Or do I just want to be of service to someone and be a little bit more authentic to me? And so that's also been an interesting process in figuring out the course that you provide versus I think the course that some of these others provide, particularly male copywriters, I haven't taken those courses, so I can't say for 100% sure, but based on the marketing that they do, totally different. So that's also been a unique learning and figuring out, again, where I fit in and how I want to fit in. I don't need the big house and the fancy cars and, to tell everybody that I make 8 figures. That's not me.
Yeah. I think that's something that we've tried to work hard on, is to be authentic. And yeah, we do have a lot of women in the group. We do have a lot of men in the group as well. So it's certainly equal opportunity.
And and it was when I was just getting started, it was frightening because I thought that I would not be able to be successful. At least that's what they were telling me. I felt like that's what they were telling me. I could not possibly be successful if I chose to do it, take a softer approach, and also not aim, I'm not interested in aiming for 8 figures, I just want to live comfortably and I want to be of service to people. Again, this sort of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. I don't necessarily want to be selling people. I want to be serving people. And that's the difference. Yeah, that makes, and you don't have to be
capital S selling, to make a very comfortable living. I was going to interrupt you earlier when you were like, I just want to make enough that I'm like, no, a little bit, at least a little bit more than enough. You can do that.
Right.
So, like comfy, very comfy.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree that capital S selling will resonate with some people. But I think that across any industry, that capital S selling also tends to appeal to people who are looking for like the get rich quick thing. So you gave some advice to people who are kind of starting kind of a little bit on their path. What advice would you give to people who are just kind of thinking about copywriting? Is there anything that you can offer them or something they should keep in mind as they're kind of evaluating whether or not this is something to explore?
All I can say is give it a try. Again, I had sort of some preconceptions about copywriting before I started it. And the only way to learn that they were preconceptions and what was in fact and how I felt about it was to try. If it's something someone's thinking about, if they like writing, if they like words, give it a try. That's the only way you're going to know. There's just no other way to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true.
And take Nicki's course.
Oh my God, that's an excellent advice. Well, thank you. If someone has been listening in or watching in and they're like, oh, this is the kind of copywriter I want to work with. What is your website? What's the best way to get in touch with you? My website is
dorisaltzman.com, which is DORISALTZMAN.com. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/copy by Dori. I do daily marketing tips and stuff on Facebook. So those are the two best places to find me.
Or on LinkedIn. They can catch up with you.
Or on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm right there on LinkedIn.
Fantastic posts.
Yeah, definitely follow me on LinkedIn because I have a lot of fun with those posts. They're great practice. They're never pre-written. Like I find out the day of what my choices are and I write them the day of. And so it's great practice actually for writing. So yeah, follow me on LinkedIn.
That's terrific. Yeah. Awesome. So it was great to hear. It was just 6 months ago, but it seems like it was eons ago.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, how's it going? How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. I'm very busy. Back in October, it seemed like things were starting to ramp up and then it actually died down again. And so I spent a lot of time in the November and December and a little bit into January, really just working on brand building and pitching. And I was starting to get nervous, like nothing was happening. And then right at the end of January, beginning of February, boom. And I have not stopped since. It felt like it hit a momentum. And then, I was pushing the boulder, and then it was over the hill and down. And I have been very busy since the beginning of February. So it's going well.
That's great.
So good to hear that though, because I think a lot of people get to that place where, like you said, they're pushing the boulder, and you so badly just want to let it go and say, you know what, like this is too much. Yeah. But it's always right at that point where things are about to your point, snowball, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I paid a lot of attention to the quotes about overnight success. Overnight success is lots of little steps. Or even in the book Atomic Habits, the author talks about how the boiling point of water, it doesn't go from turning it on to boiling, it goes one little degree at a time. And so I always every time I felt like quitting, I just was like, just keep going because I'm just simply moving forward and eventually it'll hit that point. And it did. So it's been great.
Yeah. That's, I think, one of the causes of failure. And we talked a little bit about this in a previous podcast Kate and I did, but whether or not failure is actually really a concept, but, or I should say in another podcast, depending on when this gets released. But so keep your eyes out for this podcast. But one of the causes of quote unquote failure is stopping before you break through, of going, oh, it's not working. And therefore I'm going to stop. Whereas it should be much more the idea of, okay, it's not working yet, or, okay, I'm moving toward it. I'm not there yet, but I'm moving toward it. And, you know, the thing is too, is as you know, is it's the natural waves of business are just, they're unpredictable, and I wish, you know, pitching consistently will get you will help to calm those waves as much as you can. But there's still inexplicably, there are going to be days when you have nobody getting in touch with you at all. And then there are going to be days when you have like 5 clients who all want something from you.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, right now I'm in that up phase, and I know that the down is going to come back. So yeah, it's interesting right now it's sort of interesting trying to balance keeping it going, but also dialing down a little bit on trying to get new business, because otherwise everybody wants it now and I can't do it on now. So like trying to time out, okay, maybe this week I'm not going to pitch at all, but next week I'm going to ramp up the pitching again, because by the time I start, you know, hearing back from them, so yeah, that's also been a learning experience, is figuring out how to sort of ride that wave to keep it at a level, while also not, I've probably been over scheduling myself right now. I'm sure I'm in that too afraid to say no stage right now, which is fine. I'm actually fine with that. And I charged my first ever weekend surcharge. So I was happy about that. But yeah, so I mean, it's a different learning experience now than it was before. Yeah,
exactly. Well, there's always new things to learn, right? As you build and grow your career, and there's always new things to learn.
Yeah.
But so to that point, is there anything that you have learned that has been a surprise, or anything that you've kind of thought, oh, okay, I guess this is a big lesson for me?
That's a good question. I think one thing that I've been discovering, my clientele is evolving over time. And I'm moving a bit away from solopreneurs and to more like medium-sized businesses, I would say. So the type of content or copy that I'm writing is expanding. And so there's always, like when I first started, I was doing a lot of, especially the life coaches. And so I was doing a lot of web copy, a lot of web pages, and I got comfortable with it. Not that, I mean, it was still new to me based on, you know, that I used to do a different kind of writing for so many years, but I still started to feel, oh, you know what, let's not even say comfortable. I was feeling confident with it. And then as my clientele started to change and I was being asked to do new things, it was going back to this, like, can I write? The first time I was asked to write a video script, I was like, can I do this? Like, I don't know if I can do this. And then doing it, and it was good. And same thing, the first product description. So there's like this, I think like you start to feel like, oh, I can do this whole thing. And then something new comes and you go back to that beginning. We're like, oh my God, could I do this? So, I mean, I think that's been a learning experience. And I think that also what makes it so interesting, like as a copywriter compared to when I was a journalist, I'm almost never doing the same thing anymore. And I'm never writing about the same thing. And it's always different. And even if, so I have a lot of, I mean, interestingly enough, right now I have a bunch of clients in the pet industry. Every one of the projects is completely different from the other. I mean, like I couldn't, you know, one's supplements and one's collars. And so like, and they want different things or different tones. And I mean, it's completely different. And so, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
it's such a good point though, because you're always, you know, I think getting comfortable with that discomfort, which I think people are always like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not, but it does. Because to your point, anytime you have something new, it's like, oh, but I know how to do this, but can I translate it to this?
Right.
And you do that enough times. And by the time, who knows, I'm sure there are things we're going to write copy for in the future that don't exist yet. Like,
Probably,
chatbots, that was not a thing when any of us first started.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that idea though is so important to remember that, okay, the more I do these new things and realize I can do them, then the less of that,
right.
Can I do this? It's going to be like, oh yeah, that thing, I've never done it, but sure I can do it because of course I can.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you still feel that panic, just know that it's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, frankly, we always say it's normal. You'd be like a psychopath if you're like that confident that you're like,
mm-hmm. Well, and I think too that it's easy to forget that the foundational elements of copywriting are the same.
Yeah.
The foundational principles, no matter what you're writing, the principles are all the same. How you translate that into the copy, video versus like a brochure or something like that. Like, yeah, the actual, the structure might be different, but really the foundational principles are going to be the same from project to project, no matter what that project is. So even when you're stepping into something new, you can go back to the beginning and go, okay, let me just refresh myself so I feel extra confident again, because it's going to flow through every single project.
That's why you have that brief too. I feel like the brief is like the comfort blanket to me. It's like, okay, this is my safety.
Yeah.
Hug it close.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I always maintain a customer first mantra, like, just as long as, more than anything, as long as I make sure that the benefit is coming through clear, everything else I can work around. Like, but just do that first, come up with that first. And then, everything, I can make everything work, around that. So
yeah, it's true. If you nail the benefit and you make it make sense to the target audience, you're like 75, 80% of the way there. I mean, all the rest of it is a very weighty 25 to 20%, but there are going to be math people listening going, Nick, stop now, just stop. But you are most of the way there. And I think that's really good insight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can't think if I've learned anything else. If I think of anything else.
I'm sure you have, and you just don't even realize it. It's, I want to chat though with you or ask about LinkedIn, because I think you had been getting going and ramping up your kind of branding, and, you've done, if anyone follows Dori on LinkedIn, she's got fabulous insights. I want to say you're posting daily, aren't you?
I post 5 to 6 days a week.
Yeah. So have you noticed that helping your business, or, I guess what's come out of that?
So my largest client came out of LinkedIn, a direct message from somebody I had no idea who they were, turned out to be a marketing agency in New York City, and they had a need for a pretty big project. So that was, that's the only client that I've gotten so far, but it was a big client. Mm-hmm. And then I've been networking with other copywriters and content marketers, and people that we've sort of talked about, like if there's something we're asked to do that we don't want to do or don't feel comfortable with, like kind of a referral network. And even though nothing's come of that yet, I know that if I continue to do that, this is another one of the keep pushing the boulder up the hill, that this is something that will pay off in the end. I've also just met really great, fun people on LinkedIn, and, a couple of people who I'll chat with throughout the day if I'm frustrated about something. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, my network is growing. I'm starting to get responses. I do get inquiries usually from people who don't want to pay what I charge. But again, my largest client, my highest paying client did come from LinkedIn. So you have to put in the time though. I mean, I think that people want to do LinkedIn and expect an immediate reaction and, immediate success. And I don't think that that's the way LinkedIn works. But I love it. I think that's why people enjoy my posts, is also because I love doing it. It's just another form of writing that, there is no other outlet for that. Like I can have fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people react to that while at the same, while I'm still sort of showing off my expertise and my knowledge and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I consider it a success. I mean, that one client alone was worth the time I put in, and I know that there will be more of that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Yeah.
I want to chat to you about what are some other clients and projects you're working on. I know you mentioned the agency from LinkedIn, but are there any other projects that, have been fun or just unexpected maybe, or?
Yeah, so, well, I don't think I expected so many pet industry. So what's interesting about that is I have a passion project on the side, which is a pet website. And because of that, I get like Pet Age and Pet Retailer and all those magazines in the mail. And so at one point it was just like, let me go through and look who all these different companies are and let me see, let me pitch some of them. Well, let me tell you, there are some pet retailers who need work right now. I mean, those industries are booming.
Yeah.
And so I think I sent out 5 pitches and 3 are clients right now. I mean, it was just like incredible. So that was a surprise, and I love it because it gives me a chance to write about something that I do love. And again, with some of these, they have so many different types of needs that I'm doing so many different types of writing. So that's been fantastic. I am working with a podcast that was referred to me actually by another coach in the Comprehensive Copywriting Academy who couldn't take on that project. And it is has a snarky kind of tone and attitude. So since I I'm writing with so many businesses, either the life coaches before, pet industries or marketing agencies, there's a certain tone, various levels, but there's a certain kind of, and this is totally different. So that was also a stretch, was learning how to write in like a very different kind of tone and voice. So that's been interesting. Oh, and I will go back for a second. One thing, and Kate knows a little bit about this. When I was working on the marketing agency, what I was asked to do was write some geo-based landing pages. And they had asked me at the time to sort of make them sound like the different locations, give them the voice of the cities. And Kate, I freaked out. Like, I was like, I don't know how to make something sound like Atlanta. So I had so much fun doing voice of consumer research into each city to discover, were there specific words that were used in the city? How could I incorporate that? Was there a way to incorporate, landmarks and stuff subtly though? Like, you don't want it to be like over the top. And I think I was more successful with some, but like I wrote a Miami page, and I would love for a Miami person to read that because I think it sounds like someone from Miami wrote it. Like it just, so yeah, I mean, there's so many different things, so many different types of things that I've worked on, so many things that I've learned. I really, the voice of consumer research is so much fun. Yeah, I'm trying to think, do I have any other clients right now that are in any other industry? Oh, I'm about to get my first luxury travel advisor client, which I'm very excited about. Yeah, because as I had talked about it in the earlier episode, travel is certainly a passion of mine and I have a lot of background in it, but there's just been no opportunity, and it's starting to come back a little bit. So getting my first client in the travel industry, very happy about, and hoping that like I can make that part of my clientele mix going forward.
That's terrific. That's terrific. I love that you're getting these trade magazines in the mail, and that you thought, all right, let me take a look through. There's so many opportunities, so many clients that kind of come in front of our faces every day that we don't even think about. The magazines and I'm in a new house, and I get mailers, welcome wagon, and then welcome wagon, and all these kind of, and it's so easy to just go, toss it, but it's like a gold mine of potential clients, and in the trade magazines, and just there's everywhere you look, there are potential clients.
the trade magazines are great because it's not just the companies that are also that are advertising, but almost all trade companies will have either like news about companies or new products that are being launched, or, you know, in their news section, those companies, even more so, I think, than the ones that are advertising already. It's the ones that have a new launch or a new marketing manager or whatever else they're announcing. Those are the companies to pitch. Just like, if you could get your name on a trade magazine somewhere, just do it. Yeah.
That's so insightful. When I was thinking too, when you were saying that companies need, pet companies need, because of the past year,
I adopted a dog.
I was going to say, people are emptying out the pounds, which is wonderful. Yeah. No kidding. They're doing gangbusters. So, you know, that's another thing to think of when it comes to clients, like travel falls in that. What's going on in the world that is trickling down into individual companies? Like, yes, travel is starting to ramp up, and, you know, sadly, they may have let go of their previous marketing people, but they're not ready to hire a full-time person yet to ramp up. So in comes the freelance copywriter.
Yeah. In comes Dori.
Yeah. I love that. So, you know, really being creative and also strategic about what's going on in the world, and how does that translate to companies, and how does that translate to their needs? Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you another example that I've just started doing. I've had minimal success. I've had responses, but I have a lot of background in the cruise industry, writing on the consumer side about cruising. So I started thinking about, well, what are the companies that supply cruise lines or cruise ships? So I started doing research into who's supplying the linens, or who's supplying the I found one for like the scents that, you know, the odors, like, you know, things like, you know, so I started looking at things. So I think that's another approach. If there's an industry that you love, but you maybe for whatever reason, that part of the industry isn't accessible right now, what are the adjacent industries? So that's another way, I think, of approaching things, is that as well.
Yeah, that's very
supply chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and to that end, if they're not selling to cruises right now, cruise ships or cruise companies, who are they selling to? If they've pivoted, how have they pivoted? And then those companies, who are those companies? Do those companies need your help? Yeah. Once you start going down the rabbit hole of potential clients, it's like, wow, look at all these people who need our help.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because, maybe a lot of early copywriters are feeling this, is when I first started, and there were, you know, we do the exercise with the list 50 companies, and I struggled with that a little bit. I started with my immediate sort of neighborhood, and I quickly discovered that most of them don't value copywriting and stuff, the small little companies. And so I wasn't getting a lot of luck with them. So then I was like, okay, well, what are my favorite brands? And, you know, I went through that whole exercise, and some of them I tried to get it, you know, I would email out to, but they're large brands. So I was struggling with, well, how do I find these clients, you know, thinking, well, they're really, and you know, as an early copywriter, like, oh, there are no clients for me. I can't. And then, but finding that there are other ways to look for things. I kind of said the adjacency, look for things that are adjacent, and that's when you'll start to find stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's once you start going down the rabbit hole, you're like, whoa, look at all these opportunities. And the thing too, with local potential clients. Yeah. Sometimes they aren't going to be ready, but then sometimes later on when you follow up with them, they're like, oh yeah, you know, I heard about this copywriting thing, or now after you sent me the email and I said I wasn't interested, then I realized that we do need this. Like,
Yeah, I mean, for me, I haven't been around long enough for that to happen, but I am convinced that all these companies that I've reached out to over time, and I've sent tons of pitches, I'm willing to bet that at least one or two of those reach back out to me after I've forgotten about them.
100%.
So yeah, I mean, pitching isn't just, it's not just whoever bites now, it's a long game. So.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. I agree. Yeah.
So I have one more question for you, and maybe we have more might come out of it, but I'm curious if, and you kind of left off at the last one where you're like, I want to make this full time and don't necessarily want to go back to an office. Are you still feeling that way? Do you have similar goals still? Have those evolved?
Nope. I still want to do this full time. Not quite there yet. Hello. This is Ronaldo. Sorry, not Ronaldo. This is Balotelli. See, I have multiple cats, and both of them have soccer names. So this is Balotelli. Yeah, so I do want to do this full time. I'm still ramping up. Each month has been successively more income than the last month, so I am getting there. I don't want to. What's funny though, when you talk about, I don't want to go back to working for somebody else. I do want to get to the point where I'm making enough money where I can get a shared space, because I do like the idea of being in an office, at least sometimes with other people, because it's just nice to be in, even if it's like not other writers or something, like, you know, sometimes it's helpful to brainstorm or ask a question or what do you think of this? And that's harder to do when you're working from home. So I do technically kind of want to go back to an office, but I don't want to work for anybody else. So yeah, I mean, that is still the goal, and I am working on getting there.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. And to be where you are, just, you know, not that long into it, is really impressive. So good for you. Well, this has been fantastic. We're so lucky to have you as part of the community, and of course also to have you as a guest. So we hope this has been helpful for everybody watching, listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure you don't miss any tips, tools, or tactics for copywriters by clicking subscribe right now. And of course, you can always find us over at filthyrich.writer.com. We'll see you next time.